Good now. So tonight is recording, and tracking invasives. So we'll talk about a little bit like we did last time about the EDS maps, things like that. And I'll get into some other options. Okay, so why is recording, and tracking invasive species important? Any thoughts?
You can't take care of them if you don't. Right?
Right, we can't, if we don't know where they're at, we can't take care of them.
They crowd out native species.
They crowd out native species. So what we have down here is, all right, so the two main reasons why reporting and tracking invasives is important. Reporting invasives to the proper channels helps scientists and managers locate and track the species, reporting how it spreads across an area locally, nationally, and in some cases globally. And so in this section, we'll provide multiple locations where you can report invasives, as well as the process and give some more information on identification and stuff. So it's really for like the state. If the state doesn't know that it's kind of getting at or where it's getting out of hand at, then they can't help allocate resources to control it in some of their state-owned properties and stuff.
So would they actually come and do something about it if it was, or they just need to know where it is?
They need to know where it is because they're mainly maintaining state-owned properties. They won't do anything for privately owned. I suppose they might ask a homeowner if they had an adjoining property line, hey, please be aware of this, or, you know, but they're not going to help maintain your property. That's not their, that's not their role. That really falls in the nonprofit realm of like the Nature Conservancy to help give guidance on how to do that. The state invasive species groups, they help provide guidance. Even the SISMAs that we talked about a little bit the last time, they only work on public lands. They don't do anything on private lands.
Oh, okay.
So you're it's kind of up to you to be the manpower for your own property.
So what about like city parks?
So city parks, that would be something like the SISMA, the local cooperative invasive species group, would go to and help maintain. In the fall, what Angel and I did was we partnered with Clark County. So Clark County also has a SISMA group. It's called CHIRPS, I think is what their acronym is. Ours is Floyd County Native Habitat Restoration Team. As you can see on Angel's shirt, it's got the hands with the little plant.
I say that's our logo.
Yeah. We have these nice gray shirts that we've never really got to utilize at an event.
They properly advertise who we are.
Yeah, Floyd County Native Habitat Restoration Team. We have to call it Floyd County in part or something. We had to change the acronym because it meant something else. It was a medical term. If we left it as the acronym was. So we partnered with Clark County SISMA because I had been the disc golf course at Lapping Park had reached out and said, hey, we have some issues. Can you help us? Well, they called me because I'm serving also for Clark County and we said they had a lot of invasives. So we did what's called a weed wrangle out there in the fall. Again, it's a public area. You don't have to pay to go there. And so we had, I don't know, about 15 people come out and we took out the invasive species, what we could find in the fall. And we actually planted some native plants to help them do some things. And then this spring, actually just a couple weeks ago, Clark County Soil and Water Conservation District was awarded a grant for how much, Angel, do you remember?
It was only like $1,500 or $1,600.
But that grant was given as a nationwide grant so that they could work with Lapping Park and the disc golf course specifically to control the invasives. Because those people again are walking the trails, they're walking in amongst the plants, they're picking up the seed heads and taking them somewhere else. So if we can clean up the seed heads and stuff in that area as a public park, then we're reducing the spread.
Gina, if this property is privately owned, and for example, our next door neighbor owns 33 acres, like someone else who owns timberland.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's privately owned, it doesn't matter how big the property is, it's still, the cost is totally borne
It's up to the homeowner to find funds. Yeah, a privately owned property is up to the homeowner or landowner.
Mhm.
And at the end of this, we'll talk about some local grant options.
Okay,
Um, they're more like cost share. So any money that's given out for the property owners is more of a, either a 50-50 split or 75-25 split kind of thing. So we'll talk about those more at the end.
Okay.
Angel's got some information on that. So when we're talking about reporting though, there's different websites and apps. And we're gonna go through some of them and how do you use them. We kind of did this a little last time with the EDS maps, but we're gonna walk through each one because they each work slightly differently. So the first one again is the EDS maps. Right, we went there, that's what we were looking at, all those maps last time, like, oh, look where this one took, oh, all the worms, yeah. So, this is the EDS map, and if you go, you know, you can check out, you know, the web reporting, so under features, it has web reporting, you can do it through your smartphone, so you can download an app on your smartphone to report it, different things of that nature.
Do you know what EDD stands for?
I used to. I don't remember now, but we'll pull up the website here in a few minutes.
Might be in the About Us or something like that.
Yeah, well, we'll pull that up. We'll get through this section and we'll pull up, because I do have it pulled up so we can actually walk through and
Sure.
see what the screen looks like instead of just a screenshot. So if you scroll down this, another, you know, down part way, you'll see that this has supporters for the project, and the different supporters include the Indiana Invasive Species Council, Nature Conservancy, Purdue University, BOA, DNR, and if you're not familiar with the acronym BOA, that's the Board of Animal Health. So lots of people help support this. Okay, so the first thing we're going to check out is the online web reporting. You do have to create a login for this. If you don't have an account, it will ask you to create one. It asks multiple questions such as your expertise, where you work, if you are a trained volunteer, to help gauge where the information is coming from. So they want to know on the EDS maps what you are, yeah, that's kind of your background. So this would be the login page. It looks pretty similar to every other login page you might ever see.
Early detection and distribution.
There you go, early detection and distribution. Yeah, I used to know that acronym. So then you would go to report sightings. So once you've been in, you'll be asked to identify what you're reporting. So your options for reporting would be like plants, insects, diseases, wildlife. Then from there, you fill out all the fields that are in red. So it's going to ask you the species or the pest, the date you observed it. There's other questions on here are, you know, the infested area, the habitat, percent covered, but those are not mandatory. The mandatories are the pest and the date. Okay. So it says, they gave a little bit more information here. This includes the pest. For this exercise, they're using Japanese honeysuckle, as it is an incredibly common invasive species across Indiana. You'll notice that when we go to the drop down, that there are species that you wouldn't necessarily consider invasive in Indiana or aren't on our terrestrial plant rule. Calorie pair, for example, isn't on the terrestrial plant rule, but we know that it's invasive. So while it may be less of an issue in Indiana, like many of the tropical plants that are also on the list, it is important to understand that the list of it is of invasive species across the United States, as well as U.S. territories, Canadian provinces, and a few European countries. So if we move on from this section of it, you again have to put in the state and the county. It should autofill, if you're it'll probably autofill your latitude and longitude if you're doing it from a desktop. Whereas if you're out in the field with your smartphone doing it on the app, it'll do it wherever your phone's at. Okay. Then, once you hit submit, it says thank you for your submission, and it gives you an ID for that submission. So pretty basic in terms of the information needed. So now that you're reporting, we'll look at the distribution maps, which we kind of did this the other day. Because it gives you all the options. So when you're reporting, you only get these 4 basic options, and then you have to click on them to check the observations for the lower classes. On this one, highlighted as Canada Thistle, there have been 218,518 reports of it. I think we probably all know what it looks like based on that. You have the options of looking at state, county, point, and list. So when they pull it up, this is, again, they just kind of made the map smaller. You can see that the legend is, all the red dots are positive. All the yellow dots are tested. And then if you have any green spots, that's where it's been eradicated.
What do they mean by tested?
Treated.
Oh, treated.
Treated, yeah. It's treated. I think positive is just, yes, they confirmed that it was Canada Thistle and then did nothing about it maybe?
Is that like confirmed by a submitter or confirmed by somebody on the other end that's like, no, I really do think this is?
I don't know how they confirm that. I know like if you use iNaturalist, it can be confirmed from people that are other people, like
Yeah,
other bystanders, and but it can also be confirmed by scientists. I think this one has a little bit of both too. So positive, and so our treated areas, you can see that there were 24, and the numbers mean how many. But if you look up in Minnesota, they had one spot where there were 3,680 positive sites of Canada Thistle. So, yeah, a lot in that area.
do you feel that that is, like, that concentration is because Minnesota has a big problem, or they have an outsized number of people participating in this app?
I would say they have a large number of people participating, because it doesn't mean that there's that many different sites. They just have that many different reporting. So let's say you were walking through a park and you're like, hey, there's the invasive species, and you report it. Well, 10 minutes later or 20 minutes later, another person who's much about invasives, hey, that's an invasive, I need to report that. They also report it.
Well, there's none in Indiana, so, and we know it's.
Yeah. At the time, I don't know that anybody in Indiana just reports it. I just think we know it's there and no one worries about it. You'll see a lot of these don't get reported as much as they should because we don't have as many people participating in reporting.
Or aware, I mean, you have to be aware of.
Yep, you have to be aware of the reporting mechanisms and, you know, we have a lot of people that maybe are aware, but just don't maybe have technology or don't feel comfortable with the technology even to report it. So maybe they're aware of it, they're like, I don't know how I feel about doing that online. So if you look at the map, so then this would be the distribution map. Even though it didn't show it on the blown up map, there are 348 positive reports for the state of Indiana. For Delaware County, which is where that educator lives at when she did this map, they only had 1 report. So that obviously is probably not completely accurate for that county because there should be multiple reports. There's a lot of farming in that community. Here is another one. So another interesting feature of this site is the future certainty map. The darker green represents areas where more models agreed with I'm not gonna get that out tonight. Certainty that the species will exist there. There are multiple other features to the site as well. And the only really great way to view those is to experiment with for yourself. So this is predictions of how it will spread. So another example that you can look up if you want to get on Ed's map is near maple. Okay, so that is one we can check out later on when I have the thing pulled up. So you can also look up different tools and trainings. This one has a database tool, so you can look up recently added records, view invasive species by congressional district. So I guess if you really want to talk to your congressman about it, you can figure out which ones were exactly in that person's district and make them aware of the problem. But there's lots of training materials, so there is a PowerPoint and a PDF version of how, like a training for EDS and how to use ED maps. Then they've got the Pro app walkthrough and how to set up alerts on your phone. I'm not sure I would want my phone to go off every time someone reported an invasive species. Just saying, it might be going off all the time. So this would be, they have 2 versions of the app that you can download. So there's a Center for Invasive Species, and then I don't know why they say there's 2. Maybe it just means they have an Apple and an Android version. I was getting tripped up there. Yeah, so Apple and Android versions. And the regular EDS Maps app gives you the option to report a new sighting, upload information, as well as fill out a negative survey. This also contains a field guide, which helps you identify species prior to identification. So if you're kind of unsure of what you have, then through the app, you have the opportunity to kind of clarify and make sure that's what you're seeing. And so it, again, the same options are down for reporting, except this also gives you the chance to see the all species, which doesn't exist on the website. So if you really want to overwhelm yourself, you click on the all species. And then it'll, for this one, you know, it'll start doing the plants and starts listing them and their identifying features. So there's I guess there's like a regular EdMaps, and then there's an EdMaps Pro. That's what they're saying. So they have it for Android and Apple, but there's also a Pro version, which gives like photo projects, data sets, offline maps, map tiles. It has way more features than I think any of us would probably ever use. Another way to report is the Great Lakes Early Detection Network. It's very similar to EdMaps in terms of use and functionality. It also reports back to EdMaps. So if you didn't want to report in EdMaps, maybe you found this one a little bit more user-friendly, you could report in this one and it's tied to EDS Maps. Okay. And this is kind of what it would look like in terms of it's not laid out where you have the wildlife, the plant to pick from. You have to go up to like the species category and go from there. Or you can also log into your, or register with your EDS Maps login. That's what it looks like. So you get a 2-for-1 on that one.
Do you personally use these apps much, or anybody in the room, and which one do you like?
If I were doing anything, I'd probably do EDS Maps because it's what I talk about more frequently.
The first one that you
The first one, yeah. I do a lot more with iNaturalist, which I can show everyone later too. And that's not, I won't say that their reporting of invasive takes it to like EDS Maps or another one. It's just a great way to confirm what you saw. Because there's other scientists or people that are doing this frequently going, oh, yep, that's exactly it. That's what you saw. And it adds to scientific research. There's a lot of scientists that use it to help get citizens to help in their studies. It's cheaper if you as a regular person go, oh, I can log into iNaturalist. Oh, I really like what this person's investigating and I'm in their region for investigation. I can help with sightings, you know, or fireflies or a certain plant or whatever. We have something set up for Pollinator Day that was going to be really cool until the pandemic hit and then it was a total bust. That's okay. So again, you can still flip through all these different species and see what's there and what they look like. Okay. So for the EDS Maps, just again, we'll figure out as we open up the website how do you use it, how do you identify it, where do you go for questions, and it will also tell you about management stuff. Okay. So there's also Report Invasives, which is a Purdue website. And I will do the same for tonight as I'm gonna do for Monday, which was print these in a PDF file. We'll get you the right file. And this website is https://. Not talking well tonight, man. ag.purdue.edu/report_invasives. So this site is primarily divided into 3 sections. The learn, identify, and report. One thing about this site versus EdMaps is the species and resources within the site are specific to Indiana. So if you really don't care about the other states and want to just focus on Indiana, this would be the place you would go. So the idea is really to help educate. So you can learn about invasive species, what makes it invasive, why should you care. It kind of goes through that on that website. The identify feature is tailored to Indiana invasives. The images shown through this section are the most common. However, there is a more comprehensive list. If you go back to the top of the page and click on species information. So when you're in this, if you go back to the species, you can get more information. This example is just the Asian carp that we deal with, which is kind of funny that it's on the invasives whenever we sell different carp for ponds, but it's the grass carp, but people get them confused because there's the grass carp, there's Asian carp, there's black carp, which the state put out, essentially they put a hit out on about a year ago because they were more invasive. So they were actually paying people to go and fish them out. So when people hear carp, like, oh, you're putting out, but not invasive, it's the grass carp that.
Grass carp is native.
No, but it's supposed to be a triploid and not reproduce.
Right. And you have to, somebody has to come and
Yeah.
deliver it to your pond.
Yeah, a licensed person has to come. So you can buy them, but you as the homeowner, unless you're licensed, can't go and put it in your pond. The person that's licensed. So you all use
Andrews.
Andres is a local guy that sells fish, and he's licensed to do the grass carp.
Grass carp are the one that like come right up to the pier and things like that.
Yeah,
Whereas Asian carp don't do that. They just jump and flop in your boat and
yeah,
hit you when you're skiing and stuff.
yeah. But people had them. The release of the grass carp, they're meant for like weed control in ponds, but their thing is they'll only eat certain things for the most part. They're kind of picky eaters, and then once they hit a certain weight, they stop eating. They just kind of live in the water and they don't eat anymore.
They grow up to 3 feet long.
Yeah. So they're just kind of, I mean, after a certain point, they kind of become loafers. They're just there.
Gina,
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether this question would be more appropriate for you or for Angel. The pond next door that gets just overwhelmed with algae,
Huh?
each year when the weather starts getting warm, what would you, and it spills over into our creek, what would you recommend in terms of control?
I was gonna say, a fish is not gonna control that.
Yeah.
When you get the algal blooms, that's, a lot of that is weather dependent. And when it gets too hot, not had enough rain, those algal blooms, they multiply.
Yeah.
So.
It could be
Unless you
Treated.
treat it chemically,
Drink your chemicals.
yeah, it requires chemical treatment and it's not cheap. I was just on a phone call today with a lady who was calling and asking me if we were having a fish sale because she needs something to help. She used clotted control last year and it was so costly. She didn't think she could afford that this year. So unfortunately, algal blooms are one of those things, unless you're willing to pay for the chemicals, somebody to treat it.
And it's even, you can put in like fountains or ways to keep the water moving, but those are also costly because then you have to have electric out by your pond. You have to maintain the pump, you have to maintain the fountain, you have to do all these things.
Stagnant water,
Yeah.
not moving water, yeah.
And it's hard for us because like, if I were to give a recommendation, I'm supposed to give you like 3 companies and say, well, here's 3 options for you to pick from. just like, you know, the trees, we gave you the guidance said, well, it's up to you, who you pick, call around. We don't have that option down here for professionals that deal with ponds. We have one company and one company only. And it's aquatic control is out of Seymour. Unless you can get, and they're also in Kentucky and stuff. So there's just not a lot of people that specialize in pond weed control.
Is that, those algal blooms, is that a consequence of other, is it other human activities that like runoff or something? Or is it just that's what happens to a pond?
So it's depending on where the pond location is. If it's near a lot of grass and the person is spraying their grass all the time with fertilizer and it's running off because they're spraying at inappropriate times, then it's the fertilizer load from that. If it's a pond that's shaded with a lot of trees around it and the leaves aren't cleaned out of it, it's the nutrient load from the leaves degrading in the water. So it still relates to nutrient load, but there's two mechanisms for getting it. So if a person were to just go out there and occasionally like just take a rake and rake things off, that does a whole lot, you know, just the side
It's
or
like,
whatever.
it's like too much nitrogen, is that what?
Yeah. Yeah, too much nitrogen.
Is, correct me if I'm wrong, but, so I came from Kentucky, and in Kentucky, my understanding is that there is no such thing as a natural lake in the state of Kentucky, like every lake is man-made, except for, you know, like maybe a little pool or something in a stream. And so, you know, when you think about what is the natural lake ecosystem supposed to look like in Kentucky, it's like, it's not. There is no such thing. I don't know if that's true about Indiana with glacial things in the north and so
Northern
on,
Indiana has a lot of natural
Yes,
lakes.
that are carved out from glacial
Yes,
activity.
yes,
Yes,
it's considered more.
in the first couple of counties down, it's.
Yeah.
I grew up there, it's very prevalent.
Yeah, because like my home county is where the glacier stops. Like literally, I'm from Putnam County. You hit the county seat, and then you start to get into the hills and the rolling valleys and stuff. The northern half of the county is flat as could be. So when it came through at that angle, my county was where we kind of stopped at. But we have a lot of spring-fed ponds here. Uh,
Like here in southern Indiana.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
But are those natural or are they put there because somebody canned up a spring?
They're natural. Angel had a call. Yeah, well, it was topography, but like, was this all last year? Was this
It was
called?
year before, you're talking about the Floyd Knobs guy,
Yeah,
it's like the year before.
so he had water just shooting up and he had this, he's like, well, what's happening? Well, I have some contact with, and I called him, I said, hey, you know, I always pick their brain about, what do you think this is? Oh, no, that can't be a cavern. You all aren't in the karst feature. Now, mind you, he and I had talked years ago, oh, yeah, you're in the karst feature, yeah, that's a definite possibility on a different thing. No, I'm like, we're in karst, like, I'm like, I didn't drop off the onion truck or whatever yesterday, like, I know where I'm at here. And so the guy, we still couldn't figure it out, I was never out there, you went out there. And then he called back later and his son and the friend were hiking and found a cavern. And so something had shifted to force the water to come up where it was. Sometimes that shift could be building a house. If they're blasting to build a basement, things like that, it could happen because of earthquakes. When the earthquakes happen, even though we're not right on the fault line, we have the tectonic plates shift. When they shift, it changes the way the water flows underground.
And this guy's was such a mystery because his house sat on a hill.
Yeah.
And there was no one around him where it could have been coming from. I mean, the water was running almost laterally.
When I first moved to
Bizarre.
southern Indiana in the 70s, there was a state geologist that said that you could never say that it was safe to put like an outhouse below your well, because the way that the ground was, the water went, it just never was. So that made me think, you know, it's all
Yeah.
crumbled up because of the glaciers pushing and crumbling.
This county is very difficult, it becomes very frustrating, because we have lots of sinkholes. And so the county doesn't really address the sinkholes, which isn't really the county's fault. I mean, it is what it is, but then Angel and I get calls and they're like, fix our sinkhole problem, and we're like,
sinkhole.
it's a sinkhole, like,
Yeah.
don't put a refrigerator or tires in it. I can't, like, we can't fix it. All we can do is tell you to plant a native grass or something around it and leave it alone. But like, I had a call a couple years ago, and I don't know what the guy ended up doing. The sinkhole ended up being by a septic tank. And so this is where, if we're thinking properly about how we're handling invasives and stuff, then we can maybe control some of these other things and,
Put the invasives in the sinkholes.
put the invasives in sinkholes and send them on downriver somewhere else, yeah. There's lots of things with the water and Floyd County is good, it's just a difficult county to answer people's questions because sometimes there are no answers. Just like the carp and stuff, we can put carps in ponds, but they're not always going to clean up the plants and stuff like you want them to. There's just not always a good answer.
Can y'all hear me?
Can.
Okay, so I used to sell pond equipment. I've got a good
Yeah.
answer for this.
Okay,
Um,
tell,
It's a 3-part thing. You need flowing water, which is usually provided by a filter and a pump and a fountain, like you said. And then you need some fish. And then you need plants. You need floaters, stuff that floats on the surface of the pond and blocks the sun. It works kind of like in tandem. All 3 things work with each other, and that's how you keep a pond clear. Just water lettuce and water cabbage are the best of the floaters, and water hyacinth. Lily pads, not so much because they don't compete with the algae for nutrients in the water, which is provided by the fish. So the blocking of the sun, the competition with the plant, the nutrition competition, and the filter, the flowing water. If you have those 3 things, your pond will stay relatively clean.
there you go. Make sure it's a native plant though in your pond. Especially since it's an invasive class, make sure it's native.
Yeah, there's a lot of invasive water plants, like a lot of them. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Travis. All right, so let's, we'll roll on here. We go down a lot of rabbit holes in this class. That's okay.
Sinkhole.
Sinkhole. We went down the sinkhole. There's a lot of sinkholes we can go down in this class. So report invasive. So here's what that would look like on Purdue's website. If we're thinking about Purdue. And there are 3 ways to search using the species tab. You can search through habitat section, divided by species that would commonly be found in individual habitats, such as agriculture, forest and field, garden, urban, and water. You can search by species group, animals, insects, pathogens, and plants. You can simply scroll down and look at different species and this provides a short description. So you have different, again, habitats, species, or you can look at all of them.
They've got black walnuts up there. Is that considered invasive?
No?
Oh, no, it says that
It's the
Oh,
lantern.
lantern fly.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a fire.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah,
oh, no.
Beads on it.
but you never knew about them, right? So, the example for this is calorie or Bradford pear. It gives you the basics, but one thing to also note is that it gives you alternatives that could be planted instead. So, again, it gives the basic information, where did it come from, was imported in the early 1900s to be used as an ornamental tree. Obviously, that did not go as well as planned. It talks about how it became a native, so, and what to look for. It's the first tree with white flowers in the spring and dark crimson leaves in the fall. How do you prevent its spread? And it gives examples. So the considered planting, serviceberry, eastern redbud, or you can click on the other alternatives there and get some other options. So this one is spotted lanternfly. So you can make your own spotted lanternfly with origami if you want. There's lots of, guess do it with a kid and help them destroy the paper lanternfly. Whatever you would like. So there's lots of other information on this that you can use. And the final feature for this site is to show how to report. This gives users 3 locations on where they can report. So you can do Ed's maps. You can phone call in to the exotic hotline, or you can email the DNR. So those are your options on this website to report. Okay. So this one is the Indiana Invasive Species Council website. You'd think we would consolidate for the state, but we don't. We have a ton.
The guide that you all have, should be available on that website.
Yeah, the
in
little guide with
electronic
the
form.
rings.
Yeah, the little guide you have, it's on that website and, I believe PDF form.
Yeah. But we'll check on that picture misnomer and see what's going on there. Yeah. So this is the Indiana Invasive Species Council website. It's quite simple. On the main page alone, you can scroll down and view almost all of the toolbar. The about, mission, the report it, which takes you to Ed maps, things of that nature. It shows a calendar of events that you can attend, the committees and the resources section. And that's where you would click on. So if you go to invasive species list, you can pick plants, plant pests and diseases. You can pick animals, animal diseases, and aquatics on that website. The invasive species list tab, again, divided like that. The first, the plants is a list of invasive species of Indiana. The federal order and are also ranked in terms of invasiveness. That's what we were looking at on Monday night when it said caution, incredible, like wasn't incredibly harmful, but whatever those terms were, that's what we looked at on Monday. So this is what that was, it gives you the definitions, and we kind of scroll through and played with this on Monday night. The other website is, it is now a State of Indiana Cooperative Invasive Management. Still SICM, they had to figure out how to change that first couple of words to make the word SICM still stand. So on the home, this is a blog style page. You have the about, how to get involved, so that would get you involved with the local SISMAs. You have the 2020 SISMA conference up there, which I have an email. Don't let me forget to pull those emails up at the end. I have emails about upcoming events. I forgot last class. So this is what that, if you click on the Indiana Invasive Initiative, talks about our invasives, the SISMAs in Indiana, SISMAs and funding. If you need invasive species assistance, so that might be more for a homeowner. The weed wrangles that we have, and those are like copyrighted, that name is copyrighted, and specifically with the SISMAs. The SISMAs are like the only people allowed to use that. Very strange. There's a contest, all kinds of good things. You can also, if you want to donate to the local organization to help support efforts, that's on there as well. So one of the most valuable portions of this website is the Plus Resources tab. And it provides users with tons of resources that enable them to expand their knowledge. So under the resources, we have a landowner toolkit. We have resources listed by the county. There's videos, there's speakers and presentations, how to landscape with native plants, control management, and then contractors. So that contractors tab would probably be good if you're looking for someone else to maybe do the work because you can't, it's either too much for you or you just can't get out there and do it.
In fact, that's the link to it right there, the very last sentence. I got to the regulated terrestrial.
Yeah.
That's a link to it.
Yeah. So we'll peruse all these here in a few minutes. So on the other locations to report, again, you have the no exotics phone number that you can call. You have that DEPP2@dnr.in.gov that you can email. Or it says to click that link there. I don't know if I can. Click on invasive on that. Oh, there it goes. I gotta swap what I'm sharing here. So when I clicked on the invasives. Oh yeah, that changed over. This is where it took me. So when I click on the aquatics one, it took me down here to the report sightings, and it gives you the ed maps, the phone number, and to discuss aquatics invasives, it actually has a different phone number and email address. So that, you know, if you wanted to do aquatics, oh, it's still not showing. Why is it not? Hold on. We'll pull this up again when I'm not sharing the PowerPoint. It worked on back there, but not up here. Silly computers, silly computers. Go back to where I was at. I gotta make sure all my computers see it. There we go. We'll go back to this. So again, the tracking, EDS maps, the Indiana Invasive Species Council, DNR, report invasives. That's, so first up for ED maps, for consistency throughout the next part, we're going to show tree of heaven. So that first species in that little guide is what we're talking about here. You have Lanthus. And this site allows you to search for the species and then view in multiple ways. The most common for personal use would be to the statewide view, which is in the upper right-hand corner, or the county view in the lower left. You can also download these files for printing and future use. So when we're looking at distribution of the tree of heaven, you can see most of the states, what east of the Mississippi, are pretty much covered in it. We have it, we know it. It's not fun. So on the Indiana Invasive Species Council website, if you click on the invasive in the toolbar, you can scroll through and look at all the species that fall within the federal executive order. And from there, you can search tree of heaven. It gives the common name, scientific name, and is ranked highly invasive in current Indiana legal status. So if they, down here, I don't know why they didn't trim this up. So common name, Latin, invasive ranking is high. It's a prohibited invasive special plant in the state of Indiana.
It's prohibited, what does that mean? And what's the practical upshot of having it listed?
That it's
as
not
prohibited?
supposed to be gifted, traded, bartered,
Oh,
sold.
okay.
Yeah, it's on that list. And so you really, if you have this plant, you're gonna know it because it's gonna kill other plants around it. It has an allelopathic chemical in it, and that chemical prohibits other plants from growing around it. That's why it does so well, because as it's killing off other plants, it's making space for its own little offshoots that are coming off its roots. So it's the same as black walnut. Black walnut does the same thing. That's a allelopathic plant in terms of black walnut has jugulone, but black walnut is native and tree of heaven is not.
I took the master gardener class, there was a chemical, something blue that some trees you can't cut because it'll just come right back twice as big. And there was a certain chemical that you could treat just certain trees, it's something blue, but I can't remember what it's called.
We put blue dye in the tree. When we treat the trees, we put blue dye so we know that it got sprayed. But I don't remember what that
I saw
chemical
it
is.
somehow because after I took that class, I had some in my yard
Yeah.
and I treated it so it would spread, but I can't remember what it's called.
Yeah, you have to treat it so that the chemical is taken up by where the cut is and it goes to the roots. Because if you just cut off the main one, it'll send off all these other shoots off the roots and
Yeah, Kayla told me, she's like, don't cut it,
yeah.
because, yeah, like, she's like, as fast as you cut it, there's a hormone that's sent out that they're
Yeah.
like, freak out.
Yeah.
So she said basil bark, so you would use
Oh,
like
that's what
a,
it was, basal bark.
There you go. So,
oh, okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, it says you're supposed to use oil, but I read on the internet you use like diesel fuel or kerosene or something.
they're oil based.
You're right, but like, you know,
Yeah.
you don't need to spend big bucks or something, and then,
Yeah.
like, just load it up with glyphosate
Yeah.
and oil and like to soak it in, and then, so I have, at least one that was, it's actually right on my neighbor's property, but I'm
You're gonna be a good neighbor, make
it's just
sure.
like right on the corner, so
You're just doing your neighborly good deed for the year and helping make their life easier.
I'm working my way up to addressing their, winter creeper infestation, so I'll do it, but it's just like, man, you gotta be careful with that kind of,
Yeah.
hey, your yard looks like crap, can I help you?
I've got some suggestions for you, yeah.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
Yeah, so the basil bark, some people will go in and they'll ring the tree. So instead of cutting it through, just ring it and then spray it so that it can start to hit through too. Lots of different methods. So when you're on that invasive site, you can click on the name and be moved to the Indiana non-native plant ranking form, invasive ranking form. So if you were to click on it, it takes you to another form, and actually talks like the process that Indiana went through and, yeah, a lot of legal documentation on it. So like, then you can pull up the map and it lists where the plants are, they're hashed in a light gray. Caps, ed maps where it's been recorded are a darker hash, and then no record is white, but they've all been reported at some point. That's why every county is colored. So then the report invasive, this is again, back to the Purdue site. So tree of heaven, other names are Chinese sumac, varnish tree. Never heard it called a varnish tree, but okay. Talks about when it was introduced, introduced multiple times from China in the late 1800s. It was planted both as a strictly ornamental tree and for medicinal use. So it talks about why it's invasive. The sap can cause heart issues in some people when it escapes into uncultivated areas. It can crowd out native trees. And a new invasive species, spotted lanternfly, favor this tree and seem to be attracted to it. So what you thought was the black walnut in the photo was actually tree of heaven with the spotted lanternfly on it. Because tree of heaven and black walnut look very similar, you have to look at the leaves and usually pull a leaf off and smell it. Yeah, they have a very distinct odor. People can refer to it as like burnt peanut butter. I don't know what burnt peanut butter smells like. That's not what I define it as. It just has a very rank smell because black walnut has a very distinct smell. You know what those walnuts smell like, and the tree smells the same way. Like, yeah.
When I was growing up, we had one in our yard, we always called it peanut butter tree. It always smelled like peanut butter.
And I bet you had one of these. Just saying, I bet you had one
We
of
only
these.
had 2 trees in the yard, and that was much of them.
Yeah. So when talking about prevention of spread, this tree is hardy and difficult to remove if it's not done correctly. The sap and smell can also cause heart problems in some people, so be careful when removing the tree. Again, don't get covered in sap. But there is no, this one doesn't show any native alternatives. So even if you liked the tree, there's no native alternatives. The native alternative, if for the look of the leaf, would be black walnut. So you can see here that you ultimately report it through ED's maps. You can also call the number. So again, all the reporting still gets centralized really to that ED maps location. So ED's is the main hub for all the information. So again, they just kind of scroll down to the DNR. DNR has the same information. Again, we could probably all do this with one website and just redirect people to the same website, but everybody's got to have their own thing. So, and this would be the spread of Tree of Heaven again. And you can download it. Now there are different ways to confirm identification. So you can do iNaturalist. That's what I can pull my account up and show you that. You can get plant keys, but they're not always accurate. If you don't know how to use a dichotomous key, will not be accurate. Purdue Extension, yeah, we identify these things all the time. And then remember to, a false report is better than no report. So sometimes they might go out, and especially if it's a new report on, like something they hadn't thought of invasive before, then they would want that. So go check it out. Okay. So we are done. Let me stop share on that. Find my mouse. Stop share on that. Let me exit out of this so we get our stuff here. I go to exit out of one too many things. Hold on. I'll share this for the Zoom people because they can't see it yet. Not showing. I really do know how to use Zoom, folks, I promise. So again, when we're talking about that aquatics number and it said, oh, click here, this is where it took me. So there's a separate phone number for aquatics invasives and a separate email address for them. Okay. When we were talking about SICM, this is the website, State of Indiana Invasive for Cooperative Invasive Management. And you will scroll through, talks about how to contact you. Here's their newsletter that you can click on. And it'll pop up and talk about the grant application. So the grants are for SISMAS only right now. The annual meeting is coming up. That's what one of my emails was about, was it's coming up on March 17th and it is virtual. So they'll have 2 speakers and people talking about spotted lanternfly, things like that. They give, little partnership updates. They're launching the launch and networking. So again, lots of different ways to follow them and become involved. And so that's through here. You would also find, if you scroll through, you can join the mailing list, you can contact the team. There's a quarterly lunch and learn. So the next lunch and learn coming up is May 19th. They've been doing those on the different invasives. I have not been on one yet, but I think they're pretty well attended. Here's the other email I was supposed to bring up. The February 28th through March 4th
This week.
this week is the official Indiana Invasive Species Awareness Week. In observance, they'll highlight events across the state. So you can follow them on their website or social media throughout the week to get daily updates to promote Indiana Invasive Species Week.
They're highlighting for plants or
Yeah.
issue every day.
Yeah, different plant species. There's their annual report. Yeah, so different things. There's the field guide Angel was talking about. So the terrestrial invasive plant rule, and this is the guide that matches it. It's what you have. If you really want to show your support for how bad invasives are, it looks like you can order a t-shirt if you really want to be hardcore about it.
What does it read? I can't see that from here.
You're gonna ask me to read that. Hold on. Okay. It says, ask me about invasive plants. And then it says, oh. The illustration on the back depicts 3 common invasive plant threats to Indiana: garlic mustard, Asian bush honeysuckle, and colored with the names of 10 most wanted invasive plants listed below. So if you want to really get people to stop and ask you some questions,
Those 3 of them.
here's your 10 most wanted invasives for the state of Indiana shirt that you can wear, and get stopped at the grocery store and ask, go ahead, explain your shirt. So again, if you go to the top of this, you can find out about how to get involved. So this highlights some of the different SISMAs and the work that they're doing for, you know, landowners and stuff like that. So the landowner toolkit, here's the retailers and contractors. And they have the Grow Indiana Natives program is sponsored by the Indiana Native Plant Society and encourages the use of Indiana native plants instead of invasives. They have a Buy Natives directory. So if you click on that, that'll take you to the Native Plant Society, and it should, if done right, should have taken me, yes, to all of the people that sell native that are registered with the state of Indiana. So green markers are retail sales, yellow markers are retail limited sale dates, red markers are wholesale only, and blue markers are landscape designers. So we could do the map. So you can see there's several in our area. I think I know
Just say, I know what the one little dot is right there on the river.
this one should be Reseed Nursery. Yeah.
The other one is drop seed.
Yeah, it should be.
Yeah.
I just wondered about them.
Yeah, so we have
Margaret's
Reseed.
Wonderful.
Yep. So drop seeds across the river in Goshen. It's about a 45-minute drive. It's really pretty out that way. Although getting to her house, don't be down there during school time because you meet the bus on that road. Someone's backing up because it's a very narrow road with a very tiny bridge. And then the one in Jeff, which is Reseed Nursery.
He's in Clarksville.
He's in Clarksville. He does not have like a storefront.
Is that Matt?
It is Matt Darling.
He's
Yep.
been at the Floyd's, and the New Albany
Yep.
Farmers Market all last summer.
Yeah, he goes to,
I didn't.
yeah, so he took Master Gardeners 2020. So he goes to the different farmers markets. He'll be here for pollinator days, what I've been told. So there are other places that again sell natives. Grantline's gonna have natives. The Boys Nursery is gonna have some natives. They're just not listed as strictly natives because they do sell other things. But you can go through this website and check things out, and we'll come back to this site when we're talking about natives in Indiana and stuff, because they have, go back to the top. You can go through like the landscaping and it'll tell you, you know, what the plants look like. You can pick for the different shaded area versus wet area versus whatever. So that's on this site. But if you do the get involved, that's that. If you do resources, so that landowner toolkit is right here. And it has, let's see what all it shows. So it gives you the guide again, talks about where to find the list for invasive plants, the terrestrial plant rule, different brochures. A lot of these though haven't been printed in a while. They're not as up to date. This Midwest Invasive Plant Network though is a good one if you get on their site. They also do a lot of alternatives. So they know if you're trying to replace an invasive, maybe that was a staple in your yard. They do also have a lot of alternatives that are native. So then there's fact sheets if you want to print some fact sheets out or open them up to learn about glossy buckthorn. Let's just, because that was the other plant question, let's see what this shows. So if I had to guess, I would say the picture for the glossy buckthorn is wrong. That's the one that's wrong in the guide.
Yeah.
Because this top photo is the flower. So you can see it is not, it's not near as full as what that picture shows. So I would say the glossy buckthorn or the common buckthorn. I think that's probably the one that's wrong. But it'll, you know, if you click on the fact sheets, it tells you where they originated from. So this one came from North Africa, Asia, and Europe. It was introduced to North America as an ornamental shrub for fence rows and wildlife habitat, and is still used in landscaping. So then it, you know, tells you where it's distributed at, the recommendations for it, and if you flip to the back, there's some alternatives. So There's silky dogwood, as one of them. Carolina buckthorn and serviceberry are all listed as alternatives. So even those fact sheets give you options for alternatives. So that is that's the Sikkim website. Anything that anyone else wants to see on here? I mean, it's really just go and play with it. It's pretty user friendly.
On that website, the Indiana Natives, at one time they had something you could print out that showed you how to use native plants in your landscape. I mean, it actually gave you a plan with ideas. But I don't know if it still has that. It was really nice.
So they have different tabs. They have landscape where the Indiana natives, and then landscape
Now that's,
uses.
yeah, that might be,
I think
Native
it's
plant palettes, maybe?
that is like, oh, here's the good ones for what areas. Here's your semi-shade. Here's your edge of water kind of thing. But I print that one out all the time to give to people like, hey, here's your options. Let's see here. So landscaping.
there you go.
So it talks about what a perennial tree shrub, and you can click on these and should give you a picture. Yeah, so if you're unsure of what that native looks like, you can click on this and get a picture of it, but it doesn't tell you kind of its growth. So whether it's sun, shade, wet, dry, that's what it doesn't tell you. So that's this one. It breaks it down to trees and shrubs, butterfly food. Let me go back up. Let me try that other one that was kind of worded. Landscape uses. Let me try. I think the landscape worthy is kind of the same thing. So again, it takes you back to the communities in the photo. So the woodland palette, which is the shade, prairie grasslands. Again, you can index them and stuff. This group also has chapters. So if you click on the chapters, you can find out about like the regional chapter. So it'll take you to when they meet. We are in the southeast central. We have a big region that we're part of. If you click on that, that one just took me to the map. Well, that was not what I was expecting. So if we click on South Central, it'll pop it up and tells you how to contact them. You can apply for grants through them. Apply for a grant. Here. So it has the request for proposals and this looks like it is, so any current South Central chapter member, individual or group of individuals, or a nonprofit organization with principles that complement those of INPS may submit a grant. Grants can be used for a range of activities that are in line with the mission. And so it takes you to what that mission is. The chapter encourages creative endeavors that are beneficial to the community, whether they be one-time events or efforts that span months. Grants may not be used for private homeowners. So if you maybe worked with a public school and you're like, hey, a lot of your area surrounding the playground is in invasives, we need to remove those and put in some natives for the kids. That's more like something they would support, because you as an individual could go apply for that, but you as an individual homeowner could not apply for that to fix your stuff. So yeah, they do hikes and field trips and all kinds of stuff that you can participate in. That's that website. We're done with this one. The EDS map. So this one you would have to, again, report sightings. And I don't have a login for this one, so we would have to log in and do that. It's pretty easy again. It's just asking for where you're at, what you see, that kind of thing. If you wanted to clarify it, let me go to iNaturalist and I'll show you what iNaturalist looks like. Gotta pull up my password, folks, sorry. So this is, it's really to support citizen science and you helping other people do research is what it comes down to.
Is that free or? you have to pay?
It is free. We had set one up for Pollinator Day to encourage people to track pollinators in Floyd and Clark County, and then we were gonna run a report and see what, like, were the most prolific pollinators that we saw. And there was like 5 of us that ever did reports, so it just kind of was a bust for the day. So I could go, if I go to observations, and this was really us trying to do the pollinators thing.
Those your photos?
They are.
Nice job.
Thanks. iPhone does amazing work. But I did them directly from the app too. So when you go and you can upload a photo either to the website or the app, it'll say, if you don't know what you saw because you're trying to figure it out, it'll say, here, like, it gives you options. And so then you can compare and you're like, I think it's this. Well, then it gets posted and you can see that it says that these are research grade, just fine, you know.
You'll take it.
I'll take it, whatever. Some of these I definitely knew what they were since I keep honeybees. I was pretty sure it was a honeybee and that was my honeybee. But it's these little 3, that means that 3 people confirmed it. So I can click on it. I've had 10 observations, but it gives you the, you know, the date and time of observation when I submitted it, because I would do it on my phone. So I didn't submit it right away. I was maybe taking photos while I was out in my garden. So I was just taking photos and did it later. And where I submitted it from. And then it gives you all kinds of information. You know, you can select if it was dead or alive, you know, life stage, if you can tell. This one I could tell you it was a female because it's a worker bee, so worker bees are females. But it could, yeah, it'll tell you who gave the suggested ID. So these are people that helped kind of confirm it to make it that research grade.
Can you back up a little bit
Yeah.
and let's say, because all this information is, like, you've already made it a little bit further in the process. I think I missed the beginning. Okay, let's say you spotted an insect.
Mhm.
And you're like, okay, that's some kind of bee, but I don't know which kind.
How do you use it for identification?
So yeah, when you take that photo and you put it in there, it will generate options and say, well, is this what you saw?
So it's like some kind of AI that looks at the photo and says, this is also a bee of some kind.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So depending on the photo, it may make it more broad versus really narrow.
Do you know, does it know where you are and to help narrow things down? Because some of these like apps I've tried a lot of them, and it'll be like, oh, I take a picture of this leaf, and it's like, oh, this is some tree native to Thailand. And I'm like, probably not the one that I'm looking at. Like, I don't
Yes.
think you did a great job.
So this one is, okay, so under that observed, because I took it on my phone, and that observed is the day that I took the photo. I'm really bad about submitting them the day I take them. So it could tell from my phone that that's the date and time I took the photo, and then the date I submitted it. And it narrowed it down. You can put your address in here. I don't always do that because I mean, not that the government doesn't already know where I live, but not everyone in the world needs to know where I live at. It's kind of how I feel about it. So it narrows it down and it says, oh, that's where that sighting came from. And then these other ones are other sightings around the area for the same thing.
So did you know what that was, or somebody else identified it for you?
I mean, I knew it was a bumblebee.
Yeah. But I never, I didn't have the 2 spotted.
Yeah, I think they came up, yeah. I don't, yeah. That one I didn't, I just let that one go. So then if I clicked on, I could click. So then you could say someone else observed one on April 27th. So there's someone else that was observing a bumblebee that was close to my vicinity. And that's what those little dots are.
Cool.
Hannah's on this group with me, so Hannah agrees that that's what it was. That's what this agreed, that she's like, oh, yep, that's what that is. And so we set up this account for Pollinator Day, so people could actually join the group. So you can join different groups and submit photos, whether they're looking at plants or insects, or I just use it for ID. Like, I was having a moment, there was something flowering in my garden, and I was like, what in the world is that? I was like, is there a native wildflower that I don't, that showed up or whatever? Dumb me, it was from the lettuce that I planted in the fall that never grew, and it had grown over the winter and was flowering, and it's like, it's the arugula, whatever. I was like, oh, I feel really stupid now. I'm like the poor person, and I didn't get arugula out of this, like.
At least it wasn't plastic or something.
Yeah, no, it wasn't. I knew it was like a legit plant. I was just like, man, I feel kind of dumb today. So,
Is there a list of like things that people are trying to find? Like, I wouldn't have thought to do anything about a bumblebee, because it's like, I see bumblebees all the time in the summer.
so it's this community one. You can go to projects. And so there's different projects that you can be part of. So if you're in Trinidad and Tobago, you could join their BioBlitz. There's the Ohio Dragonfly Survey. I think, let's see here. I think there's one on fireflies. I'm not still today. No, okay. I lied, there's not one on Indiana fireflies. I thought there was, I think there is, it's just not through iNaturalist. So then you can do, it searches the different projects, and there's 38, fireflies of the US and Canada. So when you click on that one, you can go up here in the about and you can join. So this group, the group admins to get in touch with an expert fireflies of this area. Check the skill guide listed below. This is a sub-project meant to help organize the review and curation of bioluminescent beetles in the United States and Canada. And it has 45,000 observations. There have been 96 species identified. 4,000 people are working in that group as identifiers, and there's been just shy of 20,000 people making observations. That's kind of how that breaks down.
So next to community, I identified that or tab. But
Oh, identify. That's where you would upload your photo. So I can go,
so you would upload it there, and that's where you get.
yeah, or you can help. Like, so if I
So at the upper top right, there's a little green button. Is that what you're showing?
upload right there, sorry, my thing's, this is annoying. So yeah, you would upload here, or you can check these people if you feel confident and being like, oh yeah, I know what that bird is. I can confirm that's a spot-breasted oriole.
Cool.
I couldn't tell you that to save my life, but, so you can help others confirm what they're seeing. Like this one got put up as an unknown, so there's probably like 2 comments that are helping direct what that plant is. So there's sometimes it just gives you the family, because this one, there's a lot of green caterpillars in the world that look kind of like that. And so they just gave it the family, because maybe that photo is not close enough to truly see what the identifying mark is on it. You gotta, what would look like a normal housefly there on the far left. So that's what that would. In case you didn't wonder, that bottom one looks like to be a gray squirrel, just,
Squirrel.
I've seen one or two of those.
yeah. So, you know, you could go in, you could also help, like if you felt expert level on certain things, you could help others confirm their thing. Again, I use this all the time just to check myself, because I feel it's a better way to do it.
Good, that's helpful.
Because we had something like if I go to my observations, and you can go in and delete them. So there's a lot that I go in and I do, and then once I get my identification or something close to it, I go in and delete it because it was just for my knowledge and nothing else. If I go back to my observations, I would, this one, I just needed to know what it came in a flower arrangement. So they're like, what is that? And I was like, I kind of know what it is, but I couldn't come up with a name for it. And so, this one's different, like, so you can see that there's not a lot of information about it. But at the time that I uploaded it, it gave me a suggestion as to what it was. I was like, that's it. Some kind of anemone flower, but yeah. So that's kind of what this one does. Again, I find it a lot more helpful. You can submit, I think, up to 5 photos. So if you can get 5 different angles on it, then you have a better chance as it's searching for suggestions as to that it's going to come up with the right one. Yeah. And it is free.
Is that a website or an app?
It's both. So yeah, this is inaturalist.org, and then they have an app that you can download for free too. There is no cost, and anybody can set up like an observation site. So it was one of my volunteers set up the observation site for Floyd and Clark County. Like she had to email a couple people, and they're like, "Oh, here's how you do it." So they're super helpful. Like, no, I don't think anyone's ever been like mean on the website. They're like, "Oh, here's how you set this up so you can observe things."
They have a second app too called Seek
Okay.
by iNaturalist.
What does the sequence do? I'm not.
It's just photos. Hold on, let me go back to the pictures. I tried them both once and didn't really feel comfortable, didn't know what I was doing.
It's got a big camera, I just downloaded it, it's got a big camera, like take a picture of it, and then it detected that I'm in New Albany, which is good, so.
Yeah, it knows that you're not like in some foreign land.
Yeah. Yeah, it purely does like identification.
There you go.
So is there a special group for just Floyd and Clark County?
No, that was just us doing pollinator day, and we'll resurrect it again, because once someone sets up like a research area, they can go in and see what's been reported for that area. It was really for us, because we were going to create a presentation, say, oh, here's the pollinators that we're seeing the most in this county. Here's how you can amend your habitat. Here's the natives that you can plant to help support these pollinators. It just didn't pan out quite like we thought it would at the time. So, and Travis asked me in the chat if I would talk about pollinator day. So we'll go down a different sinkhole for a minute, and then we'll get to Angel and talking about grants. It's fine. So pollinator day is a big event that I host here the last Saturday of April from this year to be 10 to 4 p.m. So April 30th, 10 to 4 p.m. It's going to be all outside, so we're not going to have any rain that week. If I say this long enough prior to it, we will not have rain. It's a big free event. We have educational booths. People come and they make hummingbird feeders, and they have bee houses, butterfly feeding stations. We give away native plants. We have vendors that sell more plants and other pollinator related activity, like things like checkerboards with the pieces painted in bees and ladybugs. Soul and Water sets up a booth and does stuff. So it's a big free event. And last time we offered it, so 2019, we had 1,200 people here in 5 hours. We have speakers, so we'll have speakers outside under tents because we're still gonna try to remove the inside aspect and keep everybody safe outside. But yeah, follow us on Facebook for more information or check out our website.
It's great for kids.
It's a family friendly event. It really is meant for everybody. We do what's called a pollinator passport. So we have questions in this booklet so that the kids have to interact with the volunteers. They have to ask questions to fill it out, and then they can turn it in for a prize. First year we did those booklets, we had adults not like me yelling at me, but I want my passport. Can't I have one of those? And so we have to print them for the adults as well, because the adults have a good time filling out the passport and interacting with the volunteers. We talk about bats, even though bats aren't pollinators for Indiana. They're great insect control. So we talk about how to create good habitat for them. I mean, if you're an adult and want to talk about adult beverages, we can talk about how great bats are in the Southwest. If you want to have that conversation, we have it all the time. But yeah, that's just kind of a brief pollinator day. Oh yeah, so there you go. Travis identified it for me. This is, yeah, Sevilla thistle. So that is what I have for you right now. Angel, are you ready to do?
Yeah.
You. So part of this, because we knew the slide set was going to be short, was to talk about some grants. And Soil and Water does offer some funding. I gotta get it all set up, Angel. Do you want to talk about what your office does?
Yeah. I don't like to talk with masks, though. I have to remove this, but I have been vaccinated and tested positive back in January, so I think I'm good. The Soil and Water Conservation District, a lot of people don't know who we are, what we do, why we exist, or anything of the sort. But every county in Indiana has one. So there are 92 soil and water conservation districts throughout the state, and soil and water conservation districts are state mandated. Every county has to have one. Now, the county doesn't have to fund it. That's a strange little caveat, catch-22 there. But most districts do have a minimum of at least a couple of people staff, but not all. Some districts do share resources due to obviously funding issues. So soil and water conservation districts were basically put in place by Indiana legislators to basically save our soil, and they were thought of and put into place in Indiana after the Dust Bowl. And so like I said, all counties have a soil and water conservation district. So what we do, our main purpose and why we exist is to obviously connect landowners to potential resources and education to help them preserve the natural resources, obviously, that they have on their own land. But specifically, we want to take care of our soil. We need to take care of the soil and the water. So that brings me to the Clean Water Indiana. And Clean Water Indiana is actually a grant program. And I'm sorry, I had to skip a couple slides there. We've gone through a couple of different grants, and one of the last ones was, actually the most recent one we just wrapped up was on invasive. So Clean Water Indiana program was established to provide financial assistance to landowners and conservation groups. Again, it's one of those things where nonprofits, they like to see nonprofits and soil and water conservation districts go after these, but we're not the only ones. So CWI's fund is administered by the Indiana State Department of Agriculture, the Division of Soil Conservation, under the direction of the State Soil Conservation Board. Yes, we have one of those. We have a State Soil Conservation Board. It is an elected thing, but there's two different kinds of Clean Water Indiana pools, if you will. One set of funding that comes to all conservation districts is a $10,000 grant from the state. That $10,000 grant from the state is basically meant to help keep the doors open, because as I said, not every county gives their SWC some funding. And in some instances, what they do give them is pretty minimal. So this $10,000, it's meant to help keep the doors open. for districts that have some money in their coffers, this $10,000 goes to projects within their communities. And for us, we have done a lot of our funding and use of funds through a lot of programs that we've partnered with Purdue Extension on, just because they tend to have a little more reach than we do, bigger audience, they're more well-established. People kind of know about the Extension office, whereas the Soul and what? So again, we've used a lot of our money to help partner with projects with Purdue, and but if you have any ideas about things you'd like to see done in the county that we should focus on, we're all ears. The other pool of CWI money is actually competitive grants. That money comes from cigarette tax. That's where that money comes from. And as you guys are probably aware, cigarette smoking has been on the decline, which is a good thing. But financially for us, it's meant less money for these competitive grants. And I say competitive because they have a certain pool of money for these grants. When I first started with the district almost 15 years ago, that number was probably $1.5 to $2 million. Today, we're under $1 million. We kind of hovered about 800,000. And that's to fund different conservation projects. And when I say fund, a lot of it's cost share. And so
When you say we,
we as in the soil and water conservation.
at which level? Not the state, but the local, like which,
So
just this county or?
well, the CWI grant statewide is competitive for every county.
So all
So it's
92
$2
counties
million,
have,
$1
like
to $2 million in the state.
800,000. Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't know what the denominator was there.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Clear that up for you. So this year, like I said, we had a total of like $789,000 that went out to various SOBCDs. And like I say, there was a total of 13 projects, 18 different soil and water conservation districts were represented, because historically they used to give these grants to individual counties, and they wanted a larger area of impact. So they wanted soil and water conservation districts to partner with their neighboring counties. So that's why you see some of these where it looks like there's maybe like 4 counties all involved in the same project. One of them would be the lead on it. Here's another instance where partnering counties. But of late, they're actually kind of funding. They did that in the past because they wanted you to work with your neighbors and have a bigger impact. But now, if you have a really good project, they'll fund you just by yourself. As I said, we just wrapped up. And again, if we could have had this whole project or this series of workshops last year, I would have had some dollars to offer you guys. But we just finished our invasive cost share program, because we were awarded one of these Clean Water Indiana grants. And our Clean Water Indiana grant, we actually partnered with Washington County. And together, our 2 districts, we targeted some of the top 10 Indiana invasives to try and cost share and encourage people to remove those from their property and plant the native. So here, just specifically in Floyd County, now this was not a huge grant, because it was the first time we'd ever applied for invasive removal. And so not knowing how that was going to go, we didn't go for a whole bunch of money. But I think we ended up getting like $11,000, like 5,000 of it came to Floyd. And we were able to fund every single application that came through our office, which I have a total back here. We ended up spending some of our $10,000 grant to help fund some of these additional cost shares, because we were, like I said, we ran out of money at like 5,500, but I think our total amount spent $6,750 that we cost shared. So that was people received that money from us, and then they spent an additional $3,871. And while that sounds like not a whole lot of money, we were able to remove a total of, I think it was like 17 calorie pear trees.
And it doesn't sound like a whole lot for the dollars, but it's expensive to remove those once they get large. And you can't just take care of it by yourself. And then once you have to call in, a tree service, and then they cut the thing down, and then you're gonna have to pay for them to cut it up, remove it, grind up the stump and whatever. So like I said, it doesn't sound like a lot, but it was a start. And to help raise awareness, to get people on board with, hey, we've got a problem here in the county, we're trying to address it. But it was actually kind of difficult to get people to apply. And of course, we were in the middle of a pandemic that threw a whole different set of challenges our way to communicate to people. But right now, we do not have a competitive clean water Indiana grant for 2022. You can see it's a blank here for the year. But we will attempt another invasive round in 23. Hopefully, we'll be back to normal.
So were those individuals or community groups that got the money?
Individuals.
And
Individual
was it on their
homeowners.
property or
I'm sorry?
was it on their property?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that's what it's meant for. That's exactly what these grants are meant for, is individual cost share with a homeowner so that you're not all of that money out of your pocket. But I will forewarn you, I had to surprise a few people with 1099s, because if you get more than $600, I have to. But just so you know, but yeah, these competitive grants, like I said, we're going to go for another one in 23, and again, going to try and focus on invasives. Hopefully, we'll have a real good response to it once, like I said, we continue this awareness campaign about invasives.
Any particular species targets or?
We targeted the top 10
Oh, okay.
that are in Indiana, but specifically cow repair.
Sure.
That was one of our big ones. We ran a nice full color ad in the News and Tribune to help stop the spread. The other one was Japanese barberry and burning bush. Those three in particular were ones that we kind of highlighted, but it really was any kind of the top 10 that are in the state, on the state list. Do you have a question?
No, I was just gonna comment that I think it's becoming much more well-known and more people are aware, because like the city of Charlestown, I think it was in the News and Tribune, that they were starting a program to remove cow repair, a remove and replace for that town. So that's, I mean, I don't know who's funding that. They didn't get one of those grants either, because it's not anything in Clark, but
And it could be they were able to get some monies from maybe
Right.
one of the other SISMAs. They could have reached out to
but
those. But
it's just, I mean, I think it's the effort, every little bit is gonna make more people aware.
absolutely. And Gina and I have tried to tag team in terms of school corp. They actually reached out to us, the groundskeeper, the maintenance guy there, about county school properties and what's growing on them, and if they have, invasives and need to replace them. And so we started that conversation. It never, led too far. And then, of course, we approached the city about their plantings, and when it comes time for projects to plant some natives, just because they're pretty, don't go planting any more cow repair trees.
And it's
But-
sort of like I've been on county planning commission, so whenever there's a subdivision or a development that we have to look at as a county, I'm the person that sees all the plant plans, and they're told they're not allowed to plant invasive, so they're given the invasive species list. They're like, you have to talk to Gina first and see that these plants are okay. So usually the conversation is, hey, I'd really like to see you all plant natives, partly because if you don't, then your homeowners are gonna come to me in 10 years and complain why their tree is crappy. And I don't want to hear it. Like, we can prevent that problem now. And so they're usually very amenable. I'm like, hey, I've got to do that by Friday, and send it one developer a list and say, here's your options for a wet area that works as a buffer. So.
Anyway, I just wanted to get my little blurb in that while we don't have dollars right now to cost share, next year, hopefully we will have, and we can come back and talk about all the great things we were able to accomplish, because I think this year we have so many things planned for, some workshops planned for invasives. and projects, and hopefully, like say, our Floyd County Native Habitat Restoration Team, hopefully, they are able to become more of a presence and more known in the county, and more people we get involved with that, and more educated we get folks, let's say, hopefully we can bring some more dollars back to our county to, cost share and address the issue.
Yeah, I mean, grants for homeowners are kind of limited, so, but this is the option.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, our dollars are specifically meant to go to, homeowners. I mean, that's not to say groups couldn't apply, because I think one year when we had, rain garden funds, we helped out with this club.
Okay.
And so, yeah, groups like that can apply.
So, let's see here, I think the only other thing I had were the, hold on, I gotta get, I have too many screens open.
Are there any, you said there's not a lot of grants available for individuals. Are there any other maybe nonprofits or charitable organizations, any kind of organization that is sort of aligned where if people, sort of at the end of the year, people say like, yeah, I'm thinking about making some donations this year. And do you have any suggestions on what would be good? Like, is there anything that we could like direct money toward if if the opportunity arises? Because, the cigarette tax, like, I'm not gonna tell people to buy more cigarettes.
It would probably be the Indiana Invasive Species Council, because they had to donate. I think both that council and the state of Indiana Cooperative Invasive Management Area,
Okay.
whatever SICM stands for now.
Yeah.
They both take funds. And those funds are, I won't say they're not used for legislation, because I'm sure there is some legislation, but I think more of it goes back into the community because the legislation's already in process. Like the legislation's already there, so no one has to fight for it anymore at the state level. It's there. It was actually kind of funny. So when we were starting to get the system together, Angel and I went before like county commissioners to kind of say, hey, here's what's going on. And the president was like, we're gonna make a law about this right now. I was like, whoa, back up. State took care of this for you. I'm just telling you this is what we're trying to do here. But then we went before the city, and the city it wasn't that they weren't supportive, but like, we don't want our constituents to come and yell at us when you go rip out their burning bush. We're like, I'm not going to their property to rip out their plants. I just want you to help support us and help make the community better. They're like, oh, okay. But they're not really involved right now, which again, we did that, COVID hit, and it is what it is. I mean, the story goes on and we'll do better.
Jeffersonville actually has a list of plants that you can't plant.
Yeah, and the city had said, oh, well, if that's what you do, can't you come sit on our planning commission? No, no, I cannot. I do not have the time to sit on your planning commission and help you pick out which plants. But they have a tree board, so their tree board tries to do right and make sure that they plant. I won't say they always plant native trees, but they do try to care for the trees in the city, along the roads and stuff. And
There's a lady that lives in Jeffersonville right along the riverfront, and her home is surrounded in nothing but natives, and she has little signs in her yard.
Those approaches.
Yes, Phyllis Croce, you got it. And I love her yard. I love her yard, and people think that it's unkept or whatever because she lets it grow to its natural state. But I love that she has her little sign out there.
And they're labeled and
Yeah.
you can see you like it, what it is.
Yes. I love that Phyllis is such an advocate.
And you can do that for, like, I think there's signing, like, you can be part of things like the Monarch Way Station where you can say, oh, I have a Monarch Way Station in my house. I think there's some for native habitats as well.
Yeah.
I'd have to look at, but yeah, you can get the signage and say, see, you can't yell at me about this. Now for me, like, I check with the county because I have a ditch line that I hate to mow. And so, and there's a guardrail in front of it, and I was like, hey, I'm not gonna impede anyone's sight of vision. Do you care if I change this up a little bit? And they're like, oh, we don't care what you do. I was like, because then we can use it as like, hey, yes, our educator did it, but you could do that well if you're also having issues with it being wet, you don't want to mow it, and then the road department and I had to have a little conversation because apparently it did trickle down that it was okay that Gina had her house look a little messy along the road, and they mowed it one time and the county planner had to get on them and put a no-mow sign up, and it took 3 attempts to put the no-mow sign up properly. Which is just a really funny, by the time it was all said and done, it just became really kind of comical. But you can work with people and be like, hey, is it okay that I do this? Because I don't live in a subdivision, so I wasn't like breaking any HOA laws or anything like that, but I also didn't want, so I know what the county workings look like, and I didn't want to stir the pot for something that was as simple as, hey, I'm planting native plants in my ditch so that I don't have to mow it. And I'll also be holding back the water, so it's not going to the creek, because the creek already overflows the way it is, so why don't I hold back all my neighbor's water? And I'm like, oh yeah, we don't care. Like, okay, and now, is it all native? No, because I have mint in there, but I'm okay with that because the mints help hold the soil in place. I have a very steep ditch, so it's mint and daylilies, and I've got sedums. I have a lot of random stuff. A lot of sedum. The daylilies someone gave to me, but I needed them because if I didn't have something there, then in the winter, all the soil would wash off and invasives or other weeds would take place. So even though daylilies aren't native, I had to work with what's a naturalized plant, and daylilies are naturalized. Now, you know, you got to go with what you got sometimes.
So can I,
Absolutely.
that was cool. Well, it's discouraging to me that you want to do this project and you know exactly why it needs to be done, and you as a person who is connected in the sense that you kind of know how the pieces fit together, and it still took several tries, and it's still like you can see how this would be discouraging to somebody who doesn't really understand how all the pieces fit, and they're just like, hey, I'm gonna do this thing, and then they get a complaint or something, and then they're just like, screw it, I'm not doing this anymore,
Yeah, and so Angel and I, we have to think outside the box when working with government. And so we've thought outside the box, and we're hoping it works. We're having a government game night, which really isn't at night. It's gonna be during the afternoon. But we're gonna bring the legislators in, those willing to come to play games that can, and we're gonna do like the watershed game so that they, yeah, this is how we can, if we can get them on our playing field, because then we can say, play these games with us. Let us tell you about the questions that we get.
Yes.
Here are the complaints that we receive, why we can't answer them. Let us start to work together so that when they're hearing about, we can play like a bingo game. Is this native or invasive? Then we can start to get the ball rolling and the conversation going in. Oh, well, what can we do as a county to help mitigate this? Knowing that the road department's going out there, but the road department really doesn't like to spray because that means they need someone that's licensed with a pesticide license to spray on public lands. So they don't, they're figuring out what the IPMs are and stuff like that. So if we can think outside the box and bring the government body in, then for you as the homeowner that's really not involved in the government, hopefully they'll be more amenable and working with people and starting to change the local legislation to make it like, oh, well, that's not so bad, because we are doing that in like subdivisions. We are trying to encourage more green spaces. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it's nice. We're trying to encourage more trails and more natural areas. So yeah, that's what we're going for. I don't know. We'll tell you sometime later if it works or not. We're not gonna do it till April, but it's frustrating because I was actually, the first time they mowed it, I was at home when it happened, because it was during the time we were quarantined. And so that was fun, because had I not been home, I would have thought one of my neighbors was doing it, and then it would have really made me mad. But I was home when it was happening. I was like, what? And then they argued with me like, oh, we always mow behind this guardrail. I'm like, I've lived here long enough to know, no, you don't mow behind this guardrail. And the stormwater guy was like, well, what if there's a car accident and we have to take out the guardrail? It'll ruin all your plants. They're plants.
Right.
I think I can handle this.
Yeah.
I don't know if he didn't want to see it, or he was just trying to play devil's advocate on that.
Yes.
So kill all the plants preemptively so that they don't get killed by the removal of them.
Right, yeah. When the guardrail comes or the car crashes through, it's like, the guardrail is there to keep the car from crashing my house, which happened a couple years before I bought my house where a car crashed, into it, the guardrail wasn't there. I was like, keep the guardrail. If you have to move the guardrail, so be it, but I'm planting my plants. The plants will be okay. So, just to kind of wrap up, make sure I did. So here you go. Travis said there is a vote in Louisville, March 3rd,
Wow.
tomorrow. So if you live in Louisville, you can call them. They're trying to change the weed ordinance to allow natives growing in lawns. So if you live in Louisville, you can do that. For the Invasive Species Awareness Week, there's a webinar. Oh, sorry, you missed. It looks like they're doing webinars every day. You can probably go back and watch the recordings. So the one tomorrow is Pacific Green Crab Management.
Probably not real applicable.
Not real applicable. It's at 12 p.m. Central Standard Time. Then it looks like on Friday the 4th, it's firewood rules, certifications, and recommendations across the U.S. And that one's from 11 to 12 Central Standard Time. And so Indiana no longer has the restrictions on firewood because we already had Emerald Ash Borer and it kind of did its thing and they said, So that's kind of where we are at. So we clarified, so the native plants are for plants that are over 18 inches tall. So that's what they're trying to allow with the grasses and stuff.
So it sounds like there's an example over in Jeffersonville, someone who's
Yeah.
maybe flaunted, I don't know what the rules are. Sorry, what did you say?
This lady, Phyllis Croce, if you're familiar with, the, waterfront of Jeffersonville,
Yeah,
they have like this granite globe that is a memorial to veterans, I believe, of some
Yeah.
sort. It's just this big, large, black granite globe. Phyllis lives like catawampus from it. So if you're standing at the globe and you just kind of look over to your right, you'll see Phyllis's house. But if you drive along the waterfront in Jeffersonville, you can't miss her house. It's very unique. Yes, it's on the waterfront.
Right now.
Riverside Drive.
Riverside Drive.
Thank you. I couldn't remember the name
Yeah.
of it.
but my question is she technically in violation of some local ordinance?
Oh, no,
No.
no.
Because
I think
in
there were-
Louisville, it sounds like.
Louisville, there is a woman that brought this up. I heard about her because she'd been cited for having native plants that were over 18 inches tall.
Hmm.
And so it was a big deal. And so, I mean, I don't know the details, but I remember reading about her just recently that.
Disclaimer, she's a very good friend of mine, and she and her husband, they don't have a lawn. Their yard is just full of
All native.
native grass and other plants. And compared to, a typical yard, it looks, it is,
Overgrown.
overgrown. And
You don't have the 4-inch tall grass.
that's right, that's right. And so some people in town complained about it. And city officials went out to talk to Phyllis and her husband about it. And they explained, no, we're not just letting our yard go to hell. This is very deliberate. These are all native plants. These are beneficial to the environment in various ways. And they talked to them about how, the benefits. And she said, tell you what, she said, how about if we label the plant so that people coming by who might like this or that plant, could find out what it is and maybe incorporate some of this stuff in on their own property. And the city officials were cool with that.
And you'll see people stop and take pictures and
But this is the lady in Jeffersonville, not the one in Louisville.
That's
like
right.
Jeffersonville.
Riverside Drive in Jeffersonville, the house with the red roof.
So I was talking about the lady in Louisville, because that was the instigator for this
Yeah.
discussion that's happening.
I don't know the current lady that you're talking about, but
I don't know who it
the
is.
area that I lived in Louisville, at the edge of Germantown, Schnitzelburg, one of our neighbors did the same thing. And Rosetta's yard was gorgeous when everything was in bloom, and she mildly would cut it down, and she cut it down to little bit shorter, but not all the way over the fall. And through the winter, and I mean, you know, of course, German County have postage stamp yards, like this says this room. Yeah, and I mean, none of us cared. I mean, we thought it looked gorgeous, but yeah, she's done the same thing. She got rid of all of her grass and just did it in flower bed, basically.
And so it just depends, because a lot of it goes back to education. My neighbors, Angel can tell you, I get the stink eye all the time. I live out in the country. But they don't like that I don't mow my yard every 3 days and that I have areas that are taller. They are not happy with me.
Good for you.
Mhm.
I could care less what they think, because I'm also the county educator, so I need to be a better role model and doing things like that. But it's education. So if they knew why I was doing it and what the importance is, then maybe they would be more amenable. Now, that's not to say the neighbor across the street actually stopped me. She's like, we just love what you're doing. We like to see you work outside and see what you're changing it to. They could care less. It's just the neighbors that touch me that seem to care. But
But the thing in Louisville is not,
it could be an
Well-
ordinance. It could be a
Yeah,
city ordinance
but it's not
violation.
I just want to clarify so I understand what it is. It's not a ban against natives, it's a ban against things over 18 inches tall.
Right, so
And then
it,
natives are going to be an exception to that.
right.
So like
should
if you
be.
had a bunch of overgrown ornamentals or something, that's probably not good either.
Right, yeah, so it's changing how we define it, so they could easily say, okay, we don't care if the plant's over 18 inches, as long as it falls in this category, being those natives. So that, just like living in an HOA, there's someone I know lives in an HOA, and she's a gardener, she grows tomato plants and stuff, she doesn't have a lot of space, she put one in a pot. Her neighbors flipped their lid, because it was going to bring in raccoons. They live on a bluff. The raccoons were already going to be there.
Mm.
So it's all about perception. And so next week, because we are getting short on time, we actually took this the full 2 hours. We'll get into invasive plants in the landscape. That'll be Monday night, 6 p.m. here. I'll get this recording up and send you 2 links on Friday.
Will we cover how to, like, the best way to, when you remove them, how you actually get rid of them?
Yes,
Okay,
we'll
great.
talk about that, and it should have some control in it.